Well, hey everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to a Monday night, Labor Day weekend, Monday night Mike. Usually it's Friday night Mike. Monday night shows sometimes on the beat. We're going to do our On the Beat with Ingles a little bit later this week, but I wanted to catch all of you up with all of the goings on in Georgia football, right? So my pregame music, like I said, everybody that listens and has seen my show knows that this is my very favorite of the Georgia Bulldog cheers. Not because I'm a Georgia fan, I'm a journalist. But when you go to different stadiums, every stadium kind of has their song and their moment. And when I hear that, go Georgia Bulldogs, I'm like, that's what it is. And you hear the tubas, and the band seems to get jacked up for it. The fans seem to like it. And I know they play a lot of different songs there at Georgia, but that's the one. So I like to start the show. I do a show Monday mornings on the Ref, and the host there is a guy named Logan Booker. And he said to me, hey, Mike, everybody that comes on our show has a different song. What do you want yours to be? And I said, I want the Go Georgia Bulldog song, because I'm going to talk about Georgia football. And sometimes I'm not always going to say great things. Sometimes I'm going to be really critical of players, critical of coaches. But I want the fans to know that I'm here to talk college football, and I'm here to talk about their team. And love me or hate me, I'm covering Georgia, and I'm going to shoot straight. I'm going to tell you guys what I think. Sometimes people don't agree with me. Look, there's Rich Olnick. Rich is a guy that loves to be critical of me online and say that I'm lame. And Rich, if it wasn't for people like you, I don't think I could get out of bed in the morning, because it fires me up to want to prove guys like you wrong. I want to show my knowledge of the program and my depth of understanding, my sources that fill me in. Rich, feel free to make comments if you want to argue or share your points of view. I welcome that. I want to hear other people's points of view. Don't just say you're dumb or you're wrong, you're this or you're that. Tell me what your knowledge is. Tell me what information you have that might provide some insight to me. I try to take everything into consideration, not just what I see and not just what I hear, but I kind of apply it to different circumstances, different times in my career. And look, I know Georgia is different than Tennessee, is different than Alabama, is different than Auburn, is different than Michigan State. But there are some patterns here. There are some things that you see from one place to another, some circumstances you can apply. And I'm going to start out with the quarterback battle. And I'm going to share with you some insight into the fact that I think defensive coaches handle quarterbacks differently than an offensive coach would handle a quarterback situation. Before I get to that, I got to do my shares. I need to share this on my Facebook timeline. If you could share this on your Facebook timeline or any other Georgia fan pages. Tonight I got the talking head thing going. Usually I like to sit back on my porch and you can see Mason the Bulldog and my pop-up rose bush. I think that's what they're called, pop-up or shotgun roses. I don't know. There's something roses. I don't have much of a green thumb, but I like to sit on the front porch. But I thought, this isn't a front porch show. That's Friday Night Mike. It's not a produced show. That's Ingles on the Beat. So I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to give you a little Friday Night Mike theme tonight, a lot more give and take, but I'm going to do it in front of my Dog Nation screen, because that's what people are used to seeing Monday night. So it's a little bit of a hybrid show. I want you to roll with me on this. Work with me on this. All right, so I'm going to share this now publicly. Boom, it's been shared to my timeline. And what else can I do? Share via, is there anything else? Share to Twitter. I've never really shared the show to Twitter. Tonight I will. Who knows what we're going to get in here? There's no telling now that I've shared this to Twitter, because I'm going to tell you, Twitter is a very dangerous place for a sports writer. People don't remind you when you were right about something. They go, hey, what? You know what, Mike? I remember when you picked that game right. I remember when you were right about A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They go, hey, I remember 3 years ago you were wrong about this. I remember 3 weeks ago you said A, and I looked it up, and it was A and a half. You're like, okay, yes, I'm not perfect, but do you really need to remind me in a public forum? Yes, you do. You can send me a private message. I always prefer that. But yes, people do like to publicly embarrass and destroy the sports writers on Twitter. I guess that's what makes it so much fun. Getting back to the quarterback situation. This whole Kirby doesn't handle quarterbacks well thing. Let me tell you something. That is such horse manure. Okay, and I wasn't here in 2016, but I covered Tennessee at Georgia. Jacob Eason looked pretty good, so I'm going to say, okay, he handled Jacob Eason right. 2017, Jacob Eason gets hurt. Jake Fromm comes on the scene, and what I believe was the best Georgia football team that I've seen in my time as a beat writer since 1993. My first year in the SEC covering Auburn, 1993. And the 2017 Georgia team was the best version of Georgia football that I've ever seen in my time as a beat writer. Obviously, 1980 was Herschel Walker. It's just a whole nother stratosphere. But in modern era, so that was kind of a team that I really enjoyed. And I'm really still surprised that 2017 Georgia didn't win it. But it wasn't Jake Fromm's fault. Now, here's what's important for people to recognize. As a true freshman, Jake Fromm had the luxury of having Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. And so he wasn't asked to do a lot in Jim Chaney's offense. Now, as the year progressed, Jake got to know the offense. He got more comfortable, but he was able to learn it at his leisure because why? Because Eason was hurt and he wasn't pushed. There wasn't another answer back there. Now, enter Justin Fields in 2018. And the quarterback competition actually started before I came on the beat. I was at the spring meetings in Destin, and Kirby was getting asked all these questions about what do you do when there's all these quarterbacks, and more of them are starting to transfer. And this is before the transfer rules, really became quite liberal like they are now, except for within the SEC when nobody seems to get immediate eligibility unless you're a grad transfer. So Kirby basically said, look, here's my pitch. Yes, if you're a quarterback, you can go somewhere else and play right away. But if you stay at my school with my coaches, when you leave college, we believe we will have you more prepared for the NFL than School B. So I think Kirby kind of knew going in that the Fields-Fromm thing was going to heat up, and there was a possibility that one of them could leave. And then the question became, who's going to win the quarterback competition? Well, we never really heard an announcement. In fact, Kirby didn't even let Jake Fromm talk until game week. And it was kind of like, what the heck? We're going through August and we can't talk to Jake Fromm? It's a competition going on. Wouldn't name a starter, wouldn't put out a depth chart. And it's just like, this is ridiculous. But Kirby's point was, guys, they're going to compete every week. Now, what we learned and what was interesting in Fields-Fromm, when you look back on it, was Fields wanted to learn the whole playbook. He didn't want to have a role. And the coaches, Jim Chaney and Kirby, both emphasized both of these guys are going to run the same defense. Well, that was really a disadvantage for Justin because he was only a true freshman. He'd never even played the game at the college level. And so Jake had a huge advantage. I mean, he'd gone through a 14-game season? I mean, he'd played Auburn twice. He played Tennessee. He'd played Alabama. He'd played in an SEC championship game. He'd played in a Rose Bowl. He'd played at Notre Dame. He'd played in a national champion. That level of experience, you just can't catch up on. It doesn't happen. Now somebody's saying, oh, look at the spring game. The spring game is a controlled environment. They don't call any real plays. They don't show you anything. So get that out of your head. That's just dumb. It's an exhibition. It's not even real. You think Kirby's going to show you any plays in that spring game that he plans on running? I mean, they will show you 3 or 4 base plays. They will mix personnel up to challenge different people. It is completely orchestrated. You can't compare one spring game with an entire season. So look at the situation, though, that Justin was up against. He's going up against a guy with an entire season of experience, who played in a national title, who owns the locker room, who the teammates trust. And Justin's got to work his way in, and so they tried to gradually bring him on. What would happen was Justin, because of his great abilities, and you can look at Justin Fields, obviously he's a better athlete. He's probably going to be maybe top 10, top 15 quarterback, depending on how his top 10, top 15 pick, depending on how his interviews go with NFL teams. I'm presuming that he's going to go pro. But when things would break down, rather than stay and get through his progressions, he had a tendency to scramble. And he didn't have a whole lot of time. It kind of reminds me of Zamir White this season. You know, when Zamir would get in the game, he'd get maybe one series of 2 or 3 plays in a row, or he'd get a play here or a play there, and you never really got to see what would Zamir do with an entire game until the Baylor game. And Justin was in that situation. Remember, Jake didn't have Easton looking over his shoulder. Justin did. So if you're Jordan, you're trying to win games, by the way. You know, the 2018 team was trying to win a national championship. And had they beaten Alabama in the SEC title game, instead of losing 35-28, they're going to the college football playoff. And they could maybe have won a national title, because a large portion of what happened to Alabama was the Tua injury. Not the same Alabama against Clemson that we saw do things that hadn't been done since the 1800s. Beat every opponent on the schedule by, 22, 23 points or more. It was the most dominant regular season in history. Clemson fans still, like Twitter, they still target, oh, Mike, you said they were the greatest ever. Technically, that was the greatest regular season ever, yes. And I was wrong picking Alabama to beat Clemson, by the way. I didn't know Tua was going to lay an egg. Tua, by the way, people go, oh, well, Kirby should have done it. Do you realize Nick Saban, Tua's freshman year, was down by double digits to Auburn in 2017, did not put Tua in that game. They lost to Auburn. Alabama was fortunate to get in the playoff. Saban was fortunate to get a second chance. He did play Tua against Georgia, but didn't against Auburn. So when you start talking about, well, Kirby should have done this or Kirby should have done that, remember that Georgia was that close for making the college football playoff. And I still to this day believe should have made the college football playoff over Oklahoma. Another topic, another show. So I can't hold 2018 against Kirby Smart, because the Justin Fields that I saw was a true freshman. Now, the guy that was at Ohio State, that was a guy who had an entire year under his belt and who had an offense designed around his skills. Ohio State did not play the pro-style offense that Georgia did. Now, if Justin Woody stayed, could he beaten out Jake? Maybe, we'll never know. But I can't fault Kirby Smart for Justin Fields deciding that he had a better situation at Ohio State. And I can't fault Justin for that either, by the way, because he did have a great situation at Ohio State. He did lead his team to a Big Ten championship. So rather than casting stones and this person, why don't you sit back and go, wow, Justin Fields made a good decision, went to an offense that was built around him, and Kirby Smart in Georgia still finished in the top 5 in the country, even though the receiver ranks were awful. Even though they lost 5 out of their top 6 receivers and had 6 guys either injured or suspended in 2019. And they still put it on Florida. They still put it on Tennessee. And I hear people go, oh, well, you know, that offense can't get much worse. Yes, it really can, actually, because you have to replace 2 first-round offensive tackles. You have to replace 2 tight ends that are in the NFL. You have to replace a 3-year starting quarterback. You have to replace the running back who holds the Georgia record for most yards per carry. And all you Georgia fans know, the laundry list of runners that have been here, if you own any record, you're something else. But yards per carry, oh yeah, DeAndre Swift was special. And you got to replace Cager, who was like Mr. Automatic on 3rd down. So it's not like you can just go, oh yeah, well, this offense is going to be better. It doesn't, and I'm going to tell you a secret. If you want to win an easy bet with your friends, give them the numbers of last year's team and bet them that this year's team won't average as many points or yards per game. Make that bet. Why? Because you have a 10-game SEC schedule. There's no Arkansas State. There's no Murray State on there. There's no Georgia Tech on there. All right? So you're not going to have these padded numbers. You've got a 10-game SEC schedule. So the numbers are not going to be as good. The key, as Todd Monken told us, is where do you rank in the SEC? Last year, Georgia had the 4th best offense in the SEC. That's where they finished up. So will this year's Georgia team rank 4th in the SEC in offense? I don't know. The big thing to know is, will they be number 1 overall? Will they be the SEC champion? If they're the SEC champion, the numbers don't matter. And when you have a great defense, this is another thing to consider. When you have a great defense like Georgia, and you're able to control the clock and punt the ball and make the other team have to start drives within their 25 or 20-yard line, the chances of them scoring diminish greatly. So why would you want to take unnecessary risk or chances on your side of the field when you recognize that it can be a field position game? Because very few teams are going to be able to drive 80 yards on Georgia. I'm going to tell you, let me say it again. Very few teams will be able to drive 80 yards for a touchdown on Georgia. Very few. Do you realize that last season there was only one team that scored 3 touchdowns against Georgia in a game? That's right, LSU, that was it. And what did they have 4? I think they kicked, 3 field goals, 28-37, something like that. Only one team. Do you realize that in the second half of the season, the final 6 games of the regular season, Georgia didn't give up a play longer than 40 yards? I mean, think about that. You want to talk about limiting the explosive plays. And Georgia was also number 1 against the run. So in order to stop the run and be that bulletproof, but not give up a big play, that's unbelievable. So what about this year's offense? So where are we at with this year's offense? And what happened with Jamie Newman? Everybody wants to know. Here's the deal. Jamie Newman is 6'4", 230 pounds, and averaged more yards per game in offense last year at Wake Forest than Justin Fields did at Ohio State. That's remarkable. Jamie had a great year. Now, Georgia fans are going, why are you telling us this now? He's gone. Well, because I want to establish that he was an incredible quarterback. But I also want to establish that Dave Clawson, the Wake Forest head coach, had Jamie in his program for 3 years. He had time to design an offense around Jamie Newman's skills. And what Wake Forest did worked for them. When they had the 2 receivers on the field, the 2 really good receivers, one of them a first rounder, they actually did better against North Carolina. If you want to call up the box score, they did better offensively against North Carolina than Clemson did. So I want to start with that premonition. Is that a word? I don't know. Premonition is like, no, I'm anticipating. I've got a premonition that there could be a car wreck tonight. I want to start with the supposition that Dave Clawson did a great job with Jamie Newman at Wake Forest. He built an offense around Jamie's skills. Now, why did Jamie leave? Because Jamie wanted to go play in a pro-style offense because he wanted to enhance his NFL draft stock. And coming to Georgia, they're going to run a pro-style system. That's what Kirby Smart believes in. He wants a quarterback who can fly the jet. That's the way, and that's not my saying. There's a great quarterback coach that came up with that, but that can fly the jet. What does that mean? A guy that can set the protections, a guy that can give you the pre-snap read, a guy that can recognize where the matchups are at and know which receiver will be open when he snaps the ball, a guy that can recognize coverages, a guy that can beat you with his brains before the ball is even snapped, but then also has the physical ability to avoid the rush, feel the pressure, or make all the throws that you need to make. So this is what Jamie Newman wanted to learn. So he comes to Georgia. He's here in January and February, and then COVID-19 hits mid-March, right? So he doesn't get to go through spring drills. That was a crippling blow to Jamie Newman. Beyond that, there was off-season evidence in the form of what we'll call a disconnect during the Zoom meetings that maybe Jamie Newman didn't have the same sense of urgency that Georgia players are accustomed to having. When that happened, that opened the door for Georgia to take a look out west. And JT Daniels, meanwhile, was surveying the country, deciding whether or not he wanted to transfer out of Southern Cal. The answer was yes, because Keaton Slovis came in and had a wonderful season, and JT and his family didn't feel like they were going to be able to overcome that relationship. Obviously, just like Justin didn't feel like he would be able to overcome whatever Jake Fromm had established, JT didn't feel like he could overcome what Keaton Slovis established last season. So he was looking at schools. Tennessee was begging. Let me tell you, Tennessee wanted JT Daniels so bad. You can go back and look and you'll see they thought they were going to get him. Michigan wanted JT Daniels. LSU had interest in JT Daniels. Washington. JT Daniels is a 5-star SoCal modern-day quarterback. This guy has the mind of an NFL quarterback right now. He's been playing in a pro-style system for 5 years. He understands Todd Monken's system, and Monken knows that JT gets it. It was a match made in heaven. So we really raised the red flag in May, and I think a lot of you were watching and we go, oh my gosh, JT Daniels has picked Georgia. We didn't even know he was in the race. Listen, nobody knew that he was in the race. Nobody on the team knew he was in the race. And that was the red flag that there was a potential issue with Jamie Newman, okay? And so they brought him in. Now, JT knew, hey, Jamie Newman's here. You got to beat him out. And JT also still not clear. Big leg brace. You're going to have to beat him out. It was quite a leap of faith. It was quite a jump. You think about it. If you're JT Daniels, how confident do you got to be to travel across the country to Georgia and compete against a Wake Forest graduate transfer? I mean, that says a lot. But it also gives you a hint of what he might have heard from Todd Monken. Do you think Todd Monken said, yeah, you probably don't have a chance? No, he said, yeah, come on. Let me see what you got. I think you got a chance here. And so that tells you something. Jamie Newman transferred to Georgia before Kirby hired Todd Monken. Maybe Jamie Newman wasn't Todd Monken's first choice. And then you add on top of it that Jamie didn't have spring football, and add on top of it again that there was a disconnect during Zoom, okay? Then we get into fall drills, and you get into a scrimmage. And I had written that Jamie didn't do anything to lose the inherent lead that he had in scrimmage 1. Why was it an inherent lead? Because he had been on campus since January, and he was the only healthy quarterback with FBS experience. That is called an inherent lead. That does not mean he was going to be the guy. It just means to that point, he was the guy. When Kirby was asked about it, Kirby pointed out that JT Daniels wasn't healthy and that mobility would have something to do with it. Kirby gave us a clue right there. Who's the guy? Don't know yet, but hey, JT isn't cleared yet. Okay, why are you even mentioning that? Because Kirby, we didn't ask you that question. If you listen closely to Kirby, the answers are usually there. So that was kind of like, okay, this is going to get interesting. But before it could get interesting, Jamie Newman makes a business decision and says, he's friends with Justin Fields, number one. He trains with Justin Fields. You don't think he talked to Justin Fields? Hey, Justin, what's going on here? Yeah, this is what it's going to be like, man. It's going to be competition every week. He ain't going to name a starter. Even if you start the first game, that doesn't mean you're going to start the second game. He's going to keep splitting it the whole way. Newman, it goes from thinking, this is my job if I walk in, to all of a sudden, here's this 5-star gunslinger from Southern California. Newman also had a reminder in July when he suffered a sprained foot and was off the field for 2 weeks. Let me tell you, you injure your foot, that's a tricky injury. And I guarantee you that it went through Jamie's mind, what if my foot doesn't get right? What if my foot doesn't heal? So you start thinking now, you're not Superman anymore, right? You realize this injury, this could totally derail Jamie Newman's career. I mean, Tyson Campbell missed 6 games last year with turf toe. So I think you put those things together if you're Jamie Newman. Number one, there's no guarantee you're the guy. And this is your contract year. And if you're not the guy, what does that do to your draft stock if you get beat out by JT Daniels, right? You don't plan on sticking around another year. Even though they're saying this year doesn't count, Newman didn't come here to be a 2-year guy. Let's be clear on that. So number one, you may lose your 2. You've had the foot injury. Last year, you missed a game with a shoulder. You got a 10-game SEC season now, all right? That wasn't the deal when you signed up. This road is looking a lot rockier than it did when you signed up with the program, all right? So potential to lose your job, potential to get injured, potential to lose draft stock. And this situation changed. When you signed up for Georgia, JT Daniels wasn't there. Now he is. Now the room is that much more crowded. Finally, COVID-19. This stuff is real. I don't know Jamie's home situation, but he cited COVID-19. I don't believe he's a liar. I think he's telling the truth. Living in that self-imposed bubble that these student athletes live in, that's not a lot of fun. Jamie didn't come in with these guys. These aren't his guys. These aren't the guys he played video games with and went out to eat with and has grown up with the last 4 years. He's here as a grown man and a free agent. And now you're cooped up, maybe playing Madden 19 with 17 and 18 or 19-year-olds. Not a lot of fun. You can't go out on campus. You can't really enjoy the culture here. So you add all that up. Why not go train? Why not? So you talk to Kirby Smart. Kirby talks to you. Both parties shake hands at the end of the deal. And Kirby says, appreciate Jamie's efforts. Always be a dog. And Jamie says, I appreciate the opportunity that I had. It's that simple. There's no more to it. Those are all the details. I promise you. It's not, Kirby didn't want him and Newman didn't like this, or there was a fight, or blah, yada, yada. It was a business transaction. I mean, this is college football, man. It's big time college football. And it has to work for both parties. So I wish Jamie Newman the best. Jamie Newman was first class while he was here. He didn't do anything to embarrass the school. And I hope he has a great career. I hope he has a great workout. I think he's going to go to the Senior Bowl and get 2 weeks. He's going to work in front of those NFL scouts. He's going to work with Quincy Avery, one hell of a quarterback coach in Atlanta. If Justin doesn't get back to playing, he'll be able to work next to Justin. And my goodness, how could you not want to work next to Justin Fields? You want to talk about 2 great quarterbacks, 2 talented guys that can learn from one another and push one another. So Jamie Newman is going to be fine, okay? So here we are at Georgia. What's left? Well, JT is still not cleared, and you've got Dwan Mathis and Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett. All right, so let's start out. We've talked a little bit about JT Daniels already. This is a guy that's been playing pro style for 5 years. This is a guy who can fly the jet. He can call the protections. He can get through the progressions. He's got a stronger arm than Jake Fromm, and he's a little bit more mobile than Jake. I don't want people, raining on Jake. Jake was a decent quarterback. Jake was a guy that wasn't going to get you beat. Jake only threw interceptions in 2 games last year. I mean, Jake was pretty good taking care of the football, which is the number one thing with a Kirby Smart quarterback. Don't get us beat. Before you can win games, don't get us beat. So I think JT's a guy that can do all that. Now, Dwan Mathis is special. Okay, you need to understand something. You're not going to find many guys that are 6'6" and 215 pounds that run a 10.8 second 100 that can throw a ball 75, 80 yards in the air. Dwan is gifted, and Dwan is a winner. And Dwan, growing up, had always been the man in Detroit high school football. You got to understand this. This guy comes from some tough high school football ranks. But he didn't learn to fly the jet. Why? Why would a guy 6'6" that can run like that have to learn to fly the jet? Snap the ball to Dwan. He gonna make something happen. Same thing happened to T. Martin in Alabama when he came out of high school football in Mobile, Alabama, right? Dwan didn't have to learn to do all these things because he's gifted, man, right? Because he can fly. Good luck catching Dwan Mathis, right? He can throw a ball and thread the needle, right? If you let him set up his feet. So what is Dwan Mathis going to do now? Georgia is going to run a pro-style offense. Is Dwan going to stick around and learn a pro-style offense? Let me tell you something. If he does, Dwan Mathis is a future Heisman candidate and a first-round draft pick. If Dwan learns to fly the jet. If you've got a quarterback that can not only beat you with 6'6", 210, 10.8, and 75 yards, not only beat you with that speed, with that power, with that field vision, but now he can play chess at the line of scrimmage and not just checkers. He doesn't need to clap and look to the sideline for the play, folks. Todd Monken's going to teach him how to get himself in the right play, right? One thing I said to Jake Fromm at the Combine, I said, Jake, what do you say to people that say that you don't have enough mobility to avoid the sack and you can't get out of trouble? He says, I get out of trouble before I get in trouble with my pre-snap read. That is where Dwan Mathis needs to get. That is what Georgia needs out of Dwan Mathis to have a Heisman Trophy candidate at the quarterback position. It's going to take time. It's going to take steps, stages, a process. Listen, Carson Beck, Carson can wing it. Carson's a good athlete too. Carson's just 1 year younger. He doesn't have that Dwan Mathis man strength yet. Give Carson Beck another year. Next year is going to be unbelievable. I believe that if JT Daniels stays healthy this year, he's one and done. I think he's gone. I think he's a first-round quarterback. If he stays healthy this year, if the receivers learn the offense, which I think they will. I'm hearing some good things about the receivers. Kieris Jackson is a leader in that room. I'm hearing George Pickens is making baby steps, taking steps now. Right? We know that George has got to learn to control his emotions. I think he's starting to realize that a championship could be up to him. They can't afford George Pickens to have the emotional outbursts that he had last year. You can't afford those 15-yard flags. You can't afford getting tossed out or thrown out. You just can't do that because you don't have a margin for error at Georgia. That's what we've learned. And everybody wants to talk about how easy the schedule is. Well, it's not easy anymore because the SEC office stacked the deck by front loading it. If the games were spread out, that'd be great, but they're not. You play 6 of your top 7 opponents, before the middle point of November. You go from October 10th to November 21st without a home game. There's only 3 teams that don't play back-to-back road games, okay? Alabama, Florida, and Ole Miss. All right, everybody else has been. So this is not an easy schedule. Forget whatever you heard about that and consider that you've got to play physical games back to back to back to back. Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky. You might say, no, wait a minute. Auburn's not, listen, let me tell you, Auburn is Auburn. And they're going to have some guys from Georgia on that team that are pissed off that they didn't get offers from Georgia. And Auburn will show up with a chip on their shoulder. And yes, it's been a long time since they've won at Sanford Stadium. And yes, they hear that all the time. And they're going to get after the quarterback. Kevin Steele, their defensive coordinator, he was the guy that came up with the scheme for LSU that gave LSU the most trouble. This guy is very good. Okay, he's going to have a chance to watch Georgia against Sam Pittman in Arkansas. Kirby and Monken probably won't show that much. But Kevin Steele will scheme them up. Some things will work, some things won't. And in the meantime, Jeremy Pruitt will be sitting there watching going, okay, let's see what he did. Let's see what Auburn did. Okay, here's what worked for them. Here's what didn't. Here's what we're going to do. Okay, so you go from Kevin Steele to Jeremy Pruitt. Whether you like these guys or not, they're 2 of the best minds in college football. 2 of the best defensive minds in college football. Oh, and by the way, then you play Nick Saban in Alabama. So now Nick has seen Kevin Steele, and Nick has seen Jeremy Pruitt. And now Nick has a really good read on your offense. And Alabama's going to know how to scheme you up when you go there, all right? If you win or lose against Alabama, it is going to be a game that's played at an emotional pitch. Whether there's 2 people there, 250 or 25,000, you better believe that that game on October 17th in Tuscaloosa is going to have the whole country looking on. Whether you win or lose, there's going to be a lot of emotion. You're going to have to come off of that emotional game and play a Kentucky team up there at Kroger Field that's playing in their Super Bowl. Kentucky has lost 10 straight against Georgia. Okay? And that's who's waiting for you on the road the next week after Alabama. And you might say, well, no. This is taking a toll. This is taking a toll. Those are 4 very physical games to play in consecutive order. Georgia doesn't have much of a margin for error. So it may not just be Jay. You may need Dwan Mathis. You may need Carson Beck. You may need all 3 of them. That is the attitude that these players and parents and coaches have. So last Friday night, I was doing Friday Night Mike, and Terrence Mathis was on the show. He decided to join us. I think I saw Terrence in here earlier tonight. Terrence, if I missed you, how you doing? And Terrence said to me, Mike, we're going to need all 3 of these guys. He said, I appreciate all the support that Dwan's getting, but I believe in all of our guys. And we're a tight room. And it's going to take everybody. And Terrence was right. I wrote a story on that. The unity is going to be important. And I look into the Georgia fan base. And this is a team that's finished in the top 7 the last 3 years. That's played in New Year's Six Bowl 3 years in a row. This is a program that's on the brink of a national championship. And I see so much division and fighting. And I go, people, stop it. Root for your guy. Yes, have your favorite players. But not to the point where you start being critical of another guy on your football. This is your team collectively. These guys are all in it together. Do you understand? They're competing, but they're teammates, and they're pulling for one another. And this fan base, to create the synergy and the atmosphere of a championship program, you got to act like champions, right? I've always been amazed when I covered college football and there was competition at positions. I've always been amazed at the brotherhood that the best programs have. This guy wants to beat out this guy, and yet he's the first one to cheer for. I'll give you an example. Post-game Sugar Bowl. I know Kenny McIntosh had some great practices. Kirby talked about it. His teammates talked about it. And Kenny didn't get many opportunities in the Sugar Bowl. Zamir White did. And I went over and I did an interview with Kenny. I said, Kenny, what did you think about the game tonight? He said, man, Zamir was awesome tonight. I was so happy to see my brother out there taking care of business. And I'm going, wow. I mean, here's Kenny that really didn't get his chance. And all he can do is talk about Zamir. Tonight on our teleconference, Trayvon Walker is talking about Jalen Carter. Trayvon Walker in his own right is a star. But he wants to talk. Michael Barnett last year, the senior, couldn't talk enough about Jordan Davis. This is how Georgia operates. inside Buttsmere Heritage Hall. This is how Kirby Smart has this program built. Tyson Campbell said, what's great about Georgia is you're going to be pushed by other guys. He said, that's what's great. He didn't say, boy, it really sucks that I think I'm the best and I didn't get to start last year because DJ Daniel came on. He didn't say that. He said, what's great about Georgia is you're around talented guys that push you. That's the mentality of a champion. There's Terrence Mathis right there. You know, so when people are making these allegations, oh, Kirby doesn't know how to handle quarterbacks, or oh, he's not fair to this. The proof's in the pudding. The proof's in the parents. The proof's in the players. The proof's in the attitude. The proof is in the buy-in. And listen, I'm not mad at Jamie Newman. You shouldn't be mad at Jamie Newman. Kirby Smart's not mad at Jamie Newman. Jamie made a business decision. Every one of these players has to do what's best and has to do what's in their heart. Nobody needs to be at Georgia that doesn't need to be here or doesn't want to be here. There's too many. Those scholarships, those lockers are too valuable for someone that isn't all in. You're either all in or you're out at this place. There's no half and half because the level of competition, and you guys know this, all you got to do is look at those recruiting rankings. And guys come here anyway. That tells you about the caliber of athlete that Georgia's recruiting. When a player looks at the roster and says, man, they're loaded at outside linebacker, but I'm going anyway. Wow. All right? JT Daniels looked in the quarterback's room. They're loaded. He came anyway. Okay? Trayvon Walker came anyway. Jalen Carter came anyway. DJ Daniel came anyway. They come for the competition. They come because I'm seeing people type it. Iron sharpens iron. Okay, you got to understand the big picture. Now, there's going to be some folks that are going to sit back and they just want to complain. And you can't do anything to change those folks. And I get it. I've tried. I know the 10% rule. Look, Felicia Crowder, look at that. Tay Crowder's mom is in here. Tay just made the New York Giants roster. Congratulations to Tay Crowder. He was the last pick in the NFL draft. They call that Mr. Irrelevant. And by God, he became relevant. And congratulations to you, Felicia, and congratulations to Tay Crowder. But what is she doing here on a Monday night? She's in here supporting Georgia football still. So when I talk about family, that's not just words, okay? That's actions. Look at that. The mom of a former player. You don't think the New York Giants have a blog somewhere? You don't think there's news going on about Tay Crowder that she could be checking up on? She still loves the Bulldogs because they have that family atmosphere. She's going to root for the players that Tay helped groom. The Kobe Dean played behind Tay. I guarantee you the Crowder family's his biggest fans. Even though it was N'Kobe on third downs in there, right? Probably thought, I wish Tay was playing all three downs. But Georgia played a platoon system. They let everybody get snaps. They made everybody have a role. And the buy-in worked. And Tay Crowder is now in the NFL. And look at how far he came in the system. You want to talk about player development? You want to talk about determination? Just Google Tay Crowder and read his story. Right? These things don't happen unless you have a championship environment. Unless you have a coach and coaches that know how to get players and families to buy in. There's a level of trust. The families have that trust. The players have that trust. The fan base. You need to have that trust in your program. Now, you haven't gotten your national championship. I know everybody feels like they deserve one. The truth is it takes a little bit of luck. The good news is if you're there at the end of the race, what is it like? Just like Talladega or Daytona, those 500 lap races. Okay, you got to be on the lead lap to win it. You got to survive it. You got to keep your car out of the wall. It's like that with the national championship season, right? You got to be there at the end, and Georgia has been there at the end. And if you keep knocking on the door and you're there, sooner or later you're going to get your break. I think Clemson got a break when Tua Tagovailoa got hurt in the Georgia-Alabama SEC championship game. I really do. And I don't want to take anything away from Clemson because I covered Dabo Swinney at Alabama, and Woody McCorvey, his operations guy, was one of my mentors when I was a young reporter. Woody McCorvey was the guy that I called for answers. And Trevor Lawrence, I serve as the chairman of the Freshman All-American team and Freshman of the Year. And Trevor Lawrence was my first ever Freshman of the Year. And you guys in Georgia know what a first-class kid he is. I like Clemson football. I like Dabo Swinney. I have respect for that program. But I'm going to call it like I see it, and I think they caught a break that Tua wasn't healthy and Alabama didn't play well. And Clemson deserved it. I won't take anything away from them. They deserved to win that game, and to win back-to-back was what they did was remarkable. But it's a new year now, and here we go. And the guys that you have on the team are going to compete. Kirby said it after scrimmage. They've all got different strengths. We talked about JT and all his experience in this Monken offense, right, in this air raid. We talked about Dwan and his superpowers. And the hard part for Dwan is how do you harness that? When you know you can take off running and probably outrun 2 or 3 guys, how do you convince yourself to stay in the pocket and go through your progressions? This is a big moment for Dwan Mathis. If Dwan Mathis sticks around and learns chess and learns to play and fly the jet in this scheme, if Carson Beck sticks around and learns to play chess and learns to fly the jet, you got 2 very special quarterbacks. But Dwan is a guy I watched. I watched a little bit of I went there. I was driving by, and I got to watch like the last 5 minutes of scrimmage from the bridge. I didn't know where, but there we were, and I got to see a little bit of it. I did, and let me tell you, I know what I saw, and it's good news. It's a great quarterback room. So I guess my thought is just I read the comments and I go, do the Georgia fans really know how good this is right now? I don't think they do. That's not to say there's not going to be challenges, but the offensive line's coming together. The receivers, I think they could get a little bit better. But I've heard some good things about Matt Landers, certainly George Pickens, Kieris Jackson, Jermaine Burton. Kirby did tell us that Trey McKitty got a little banged up, so we got to keep an eye on that. Need to see Trey McKitty. Need him to get healthy. But I understand Darnell Washington caught a really nice pass from Dwan. So there's been some good moments in there. What else we got? Dan Mullen. Now, this is what's fun about Georgia fans. I didn't understand this, that Georgia fans have this thing for Dan Mullen. It preceded me. But I see all these pictures of Dan Mullen where they put like these rainbow wigs on him. They put him like in clown. And I always thought Dan Mullen was kind of a colorful, fun, upbeat guy. But boy, did Georgia fans let him have it. And I didn't really understand it until last Saturday when there was a press conference out. And I don't know if you saw this. See, look at Gillespie. There you guys are going after him already. And a reporter asked Dan Mullen about this new rule. And apparently this new rule, it's 90 minutes before the game, if your guys are out there warming up, they either have to wear a jersey with their number on it or they have to wear something with their number on it. And Dan Mullen is upset that there's this new rule that has happened. And the way it went was somebody said, well, wait a minute, who do you think turned you in for it? And Dan Mullen said, who do you think? And the guy said, Georgia. And Mullen goes, you said it, not me. And then he gets this big grin and I'm going, did you really just do that? Did you really just call out Kirby Smart for... Now here's the thing. He's probably right. Let me tell you why he's probably right. Kirby and Georgia probably did complain about Florida going through. Why? Why are they probably right? Because Kirby Smart, like Nick Saban, looks for every minute advantage that he can get. To the point that Georgia doesn't even provide the 70-man dress list. That used to be we'd go up in the press box and we would go to the Hall of Fame sports information guy, Claude Felton, and say, Claude, can we get the 70-man dress roster? And he'd go, yeah, here you go. And we'd look over the guys that made the trip, right? Because only 70 guys get to travel. And we go, here are the guys that made it, and here's the guys that didn't. And that'd be like a nice little pregame. No. Kirby quit doing it. No more 70-man roster. So now you got to pull out the binoculars, check off every guy, Jake Rowe from 24/7 will look at these guys, and Dasher from Rivals will look at these guys. Connor Riley or Jeff Centel will help me, or Brandon Adams. Help me find these guys. We got to figure out who's here. So that was a real pain. And then Kirby doesn't do a depth chart either. Like I was telling you about the quarterback battle. There's not going to be a depth chart. He probably won't even name a starter. We'll probably just have to wait to see who first, because that's what Kirby does. Because why tell him? You might have heard Sam Pittman when they said, who's your quarterback going to be, Sam? He said, I'll tell you when Kirby tells me. Okay, well, let's all play this game. It gets under my skin, frankly, because I just want to know what to write. For Pete's sakes, Kirby. Okay, but he doesn't want to give up. He don't want to give any information away. I get it. Conversely, Dan Mullen says there's schools with 20 or 30 quality control assistants that are out there trying to find. That's Georgia. That's the team that plays them every year. It's not Alabama. Kirby's got a lot of these quality control guys. He probably is trying to find out what Florida players are playing and which ones aren't, so that he can make whatever last-minute adjustments. Hey, coach, the receiver, blah, 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 he's a scratch. Good to know. So now when they go to their 13 or 12 personnel, maybe we don't do this adjustment. I mean, he's looking for everything. That's just what Kirby does. And the fact that Mullen got that upset about it was hilarious. And so I wrote the story. If you haven't seen the video, you need to see it. Georgia fans seem to really be enjoying this. Let's talk about NFL rosters. So a lot of big news. Saturday was the cut down to 53. We mentioned Tay Crowder earlier in the show, made that roster. Jake Fromm made the 53-man roster with the Buffalo Bills, a team that really doesn't fit Jake. If you look at their starter, Josh Allen, big arm guy, can run, mobility, bad weather. Jake's kryptonite was bad weather last year. Remember Kentucky? Couldn't even throw the ball. A&M didn't look great. Missouri, not his best night. And now he's in Buffalo? I mean, that's like the last place that Jake Fromm should be is Buffalo. He needs to be in a dome, in a spread like the Saints office or something, because he's a dink and dunk processor, right? But he made the Bills. So congratulations to Jake Fromm. Congratulations to Tay Crowder. All the guys that were drafted made the roster. There were a lot of guys that got cut. So we kind of had to hold our breath Sunday to see which of the guys cut would get signed back to the practice squads. Now, the good news is they've expanded the practice squads this year to 16. Rodrigo Blankenship, there it is. Thanks for the reminder, James Brown. Rodrigo actually made the 53-man squad. I believe he was the only free agent that made the 53-man roster. Lawrence Cager got cut. J.R. Reed got cut. Tyler Simmons got cut. Eli Wolf got cut. Who else? Cager got re-signed to the Jets practice squad. Eli Wolf got re-signed to the Baltimore Ravens. I need to call this story up because I don't want to miss anybody. I know the Georgia fans, like you said, we saw Miss Crowder in here earlier, Tay's mom. We're still waiting to see if Brian Herrion can latch on. Trying to see if J.R. Reed can latch on somewhere. Here's some big news about DeAndre Walker. DeAndre Walker to me was such a hard luck story because watching that SEC championship game of 2018, DeAndre Walker was on his way to being that game MVP. He'd already had a sack, a forced fumble, like 5 tackles. I mean, he was living in that Alabama backfield, and then something went wrong late in the third quarter. He went out of the game. A younger player came in that lost assignment, and that really opened things up for Alabama. If DeAndre Walker does not get hurt, I'm completely convinced that Georgia wins the 2018 SEC title game and has a shot against Clemson in the national. They would have won their playoff game and would have played for a national championship. But DeAndre went down. DeAndre still tried to play in the Sugar Bowl against Texas. He went there. He practiced. He didn't skip it to prepare. I mean, you talk about a team guy. DeAndre Walker did everything he could. Wasn't able to go in the Senior Bowl. Had to have surgery for a sports hernia. Wasn't able to work out. Slipped in the draft to the 4th round. Was on the Titans practice squad or injured reserve all year. And the Titans released him. And once you release a player, all the other teams have a chance to file a waiver to sign this guy. And the Titans probably thought that nobody would sign DeAndre and they'd be able to sign him and put him on the practice squad. But the Seattle Seahawks picked him up. And DeAndre Walker is on the Seattle Seahawks 53-man roster. I'm going to be very interested to watch for DeAndre Walker this year. DeAndre Walker, to me, is a very special football player. He's a team guy. He went all out for Georgia. And the Seahawks might have just got a steal. So let's keep an eye on DeAndre Walker to see if he has the kind of career in Seattle that I think he might. I think Pete Carroll is a fabulous coach. I love it. Love Pete Carroll. So Isaac Nauta, cut by the Lions, back on the practice squad. Good news there. Cager. Elijah Holyfield, cut, re-signed to the Philadelphia Eagles practice squad. Nick Moore, long snapper, cut by the Ravens, re-signed. Really hard to make it in the NFL as a snapper, so congratulations to Nick Moore. Tyreek McGee, we hardly knew you, right? This is how good Georgia is. Tyreek McGee wasn't even a star here, and he's with the Los Angeles Rams in their secondary. And Cam Neslak, the punter, signs with Atlanta. Still unsigned, like I said, we're waiting to see Brian Herrien, Tyler Simmons, Terry Godwin, Nate Patrick. Listen, it's tough to make it in the NFL. Tyler Clark's not in there either. David Marshall, guys that were so beat up. I wondered about their medicals. You talk about guys that gave their all and really, absolutely battled. So what else we got? So tonight, Tyson Campbell spoke. I was impressed with him. I asked him if Arian Smith was the fastest guy on the team. Tyson said there's a lot of fast guys. They need to have a team race. Let's see if they go through with it. Let's see if the Bulldogs go through with it. Is it going to be Campbell? Is it going to be Stokes? Is it going to be Arian Smith? Or is it going to be Dwan Mathis? Those are all four guys that run sub-11-second 100-yard dashes. So one of those guys would win. I bet I would take who would you take in the 100 meters in that one? Right? It'd be pretty interesting. So the fastest man competition. But like what Trayvon Walker said he'd be willing to play special teams if coach wanted him to. I'm a big believer in Trayvon Walker. If Trayvon Walker was a stock, I would be buying. Antoine takes Kylie Ringo. Kylie is fast, but he's got to get back from that torn labrum. Thanks for the reminder. Charlie Warner, another guy that made the San Francisco 49ers roster. Just a lot of guys that have worked so hard. Michael Barnett, by the way, Michael was cut, but he's on the injured reserve for New England. So Michael Barnett, a part of the New England Patriots, he'll have a chance. He had injured his knee in the final week of practice. I mean, you talk about another great story. Michael Barnett, one of the guys affected by COVID-19, not drafted, not a priority free agent. So he had to basically continue to work out and sit and wait for his phone to ring. It rings. He flies from Seattle to Foxborough and processes and gets 3 practices in, does enough to impress the Patriots that when he injures his knee, they decide we're going to keep this guy and keep him on IR instead of coming with an injury settlement. That's right. I see Ryan Bray talks about McColl posting that race between him and Tyreek Hill. You know, Tyreek Hill has a hamstring, so keep an eye on McColl. Might not be a bad fantasy football pick, which reminds me, I need to file a waiver pick tonight for Rodrigo Blankenship. I got to have him as my kicker. Someone asked me about Tyreek Stevenson. Tyreek Stevenson is getting a lot of work. Joel Moody's asking for stats. Joel, Kirby doesn't give stats. That's not what Kirby does. We talked a little earlier about how protective Kirby is. Kirby is somewhat transparent, but he picks and chooses what he wants you to know. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find out some things that he said here. I'll find some passages here. Moving forward from Jamie Newman. How do you feel about the quarterback position? He says it's a work in progress. Had some guys today that practice well. Want a guy to assume the lead and take the lead. We talked about the 3 quarterbacks. Talks about a guy making a great play in a great series and then making a mistake. You know, consistency so important. Got to take care of the football in a Kirby Smart offense. Whether he expects JT Daniels to be cleared for Arkansas, yes, he expects it, but can't just assume it. So you got to have DeJuan and Carson ready. And listen, it's the SEC. You guys know that stat. I've thrown it out there a million times. Only 4 out of 14 teams made it through the season with the same quarterback in the SEC. I do feel the offensive line will hold up. I'm hearing good things about the offensive line. Really impressed with Owen Condon at right tackle. To me, he's been one of the biggest surprises. I think Erickson at right guard. I know Big Ben Cleveland is battling it out there. Justin Schaefer and Jamari Salyer. I saw Matt Stincombe the other day put Jamari Salyer as a first-team All-SEC left tackle, and Jamari hadn't even played the spot. So obviously Stincombe's getting some good reports from camp. I would trust he's very connected. The defense made some plays. They high-pointed some balls. You know, again, this goes back to the Dwan Mathis thing. When you've got a guy that's this talented with this kind of arm talent, it's kind of like Michael Jordan, right? There's that old saying that nobody stopped Michael Jordan except for Dean Smith. You know, Dwan's got to find his edge, and he's got to learn what he can and can't do. And that's one reason why Kirby isn't running a certain offense geared for one guy. He wants to give everybody an opportunity to see what they can do. Once he sees what everyone can and cannot do, then you pare the playbook down and say, okay, this is what we do well. And we know that with this guy, and then you find the plays, well, what can all of them do well? And that's kind of your base offense. So we know it's an air raid. We know that in air raid offense, when we talk about balance, we don't talk about 50% run and 50% pass. We talk about 20% to this receiver, 20% to this receiver, 20% to this running back, 20%. Balance is about distributing the ball all the way around. That's what balance is in an air raid offense. Now, James Cook is going to be in great position. I wrote a story about James today. James, to me, if I was going to pick a fantasy football, Georgia football player, I'd pick James Cook because I think he's going to score touchdowns as a receiver, as a runner, and possibly on special teams. My question is, can James hold up? Last year against LSU in the SEC title game, I seem to remember James getting injured between the tackles early. So can he be the single back guy, or is he going to be a guy in the slot? You know, Zamir White to me is the starting tailback. How much work is Zamir going to get between the tackles? I know Zamir's been working on his pass catching. Kenny McIntosh is a nice blend. He's good in the open field. He's good with his hands. He's good between the tackles, but he's only got 25 career carries. Can he hold up? Same thing with Kendall Milton, another talented, versatile guy, but can he hold up? So there's a lot of questions to be answered. Only time will tell. There's a lot to be excited about if you're a Georgia fan. But my main thought tonight in sharing all that background on the quarterbacks, telling you the story, giving you some background so you can understand. Because a lot of the national media, like I wrote a story on Kirk Herbstreit, and I think Kirk Herbstreit is fantastic, by the way. He's my favorite analyst. I think he's usually the most reliable. But right now, there's 77 programs. And he doesn't have the time to invest in Georgia that you do, or that we do. And I don't think Kirk Herbstreit has a very good read on the quarterback situation right now. I don't think David Pollock does either. Pollock is, he flipped his lid. And I love Pollock. Like, part of what I love about Pollock is he just puts it out there. And he doesn't care what you think. Greatest defensive player in Georgia history. Certainly, he'll be going in the Hall of Fame. Very much deserved. But I think Pollock is wrong to say now that Newman's not here, Georgia can't win a championship. I disagree with David on that. I will say that there's less of a margin for error because you're down one experienced quarterback in a very inexperienced room. But I got a lot of faith in JT and Dwan and Carson and Stetson. And I got a lot of faith in Todd Monken. And again, I'm a guy that's covered a lot of programs. I'll tell you my concerns. My concerns is the receiving core. My concern is George Pickens' emotional ability to control himself emotionally. You don't want to see him get baited into some fight against the team and be ejected. I mean, he can't do that. You got to have him. He's too important. My concern is injuries, protecting the quarterback. I think some of these teams early on, it's a murderer's row between Kevin Steele, Jeremy Pruitt, Nick Saban. They're going to put your quarterback down. I think injuries are a concern. I like the offensive line. I'm not worried about it. I have a lot of confidence in Matt Luke and the talent that they've recruited. Got a lot of confidence in this defense. I think it's going to be the best defense. Now, statistically, it may not be just because they played 10 SEC games, but got a lot of confidence in this team. Really do. Schedule's tough, like the Arkansas layup, but after that, Georgia could lose one of those next 4 or 5 games. They're losable. I'm going to tell you, they're losable. When you play that kind of teams in succession, you only need to be a little bit off. So, Nakobe Dean, I see this guy talking about Butkus Award. I think Nakobe is a guy that's going to really explode on the scene this year. He's a guy I think is going to make leaps. Lewis Cena, guy I keep hearing more and more about. You guys mentioned Tyreek Stevenson. Gosh, guys, we could talk all night Georgia football. I guess I want to thank you for joining me tonight. If you get a chance to, like I said, share this to your Georgia accounts or with your friends. Always good when we get big crowds. Then the boss goes, man, the Georgia fans love it. Do more video. And I go, okay, if they love it, I will. And because it's fun. It's easy. It's an easier format for me to talk. Writing, it's laborious. I can talk faster than I can write. Dasher says, what about Nolan Smith? Like I said, they're an embarrassment of riches. He was the #1 player 2 years ago, and he's behind Aziz and competing with Jermaine Johnson. I mean, that front, this Georgia defensive front is nasty. These guys are nasty. Mike Gay, thank you for the compliment. Listen, everyone, COVID-19 is real. Keep your mask on. Stay safe. Let's get through. We're almost, I think this Labor Day holiday, I keep saying we're almost there, but let's get over the hump now. People maybe not traveling. Let's get through the next 3 weeks with your masks on, your social distancing, so that when September 26th and October 3rd get here, the big story isn't some blown up number. The compromised immune system people, they're still at risk. So please be careful, be safe, take care of yourselves. When you take your risks, make it a measured risk. And I guess the cliche I keep throwing out there, make sure the juice is worth the squeeze. So, hey, everybody, have a great week, and thanks for joining me tonight on Monday Night Mike, something a little different.